Congressional investigation launched into whether the Reagan-Bush campaign intentionally delayed release of American hostages. Does Saddam Hussein still have biological weapons? And anti-abortion demonstrators. Police move in. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. In a move that could have an impact on the 1992 election, leaders of Congress announced today that investigators will examine explosive allegations surrounding the 1980 campaign for president and vice president. Did the Reagan-Bush campaign try to ensure victory by ensuring American hostages in Iran were not freed before the election? Rita Braver is covering the story.
House and Senate leaders today announced a formal inquiry into whether the 1980 Reagan campaign team made an agreement to delay the release of U.S. hostages until after the Reagan administration took office in 1981, in exchange for the subsequent sale of arms to the government of Iran. House Speaker Thomas Foley said the leadership believes President Bush's claim that he had no involvement in or knowledge of such a scheme.
But the weight of circumstantial information and persistent rumors over the years that such contacts did take place have led us to conclude, along with President Reagan and President Carter and President Bush, that these matters should be brought to a conclusive end once and for all.
President Bush, out for a jog today, would not talk about the investigation, his spokesman saying rather cryptically that a probe is justified if there's legitimate evidence, but foolish if it's just a political witch hunt. Rumors that the late Reagan campaign chairman and CIA director William Casey engineered a hostage deal took on new life because of evidence compiled in a forthcoming book by Gary Sick, a national security staffer in the Carter White House, and because of claims by former Iranian President Abul Hassan Bani Sadr. President Reagan has denied that his campaign did anything to delay the hostage release.
I did some things actually the other way to try and be of help in getting those hostages. I felt very sorry for them and getting them out of there.
And a key House Republican accused the Democratic leadership of political shenanigans.
And I think we're just going to be wasting an awful lot of money on a charade here.
To the extent that we conduct a highly partisan investigation, it will lose credibility, and that's not the way to go.
So far, no witness list has been compiled, but Capitol Hill sources said Robert Gates, President Bush's controversial nominee to be CIA chief, was likely to be interviewed because of his close relationship with Casey. The investigation will be conducted by a Senate subcommittee and a special House task force. First, they'll subpoena documents and conduct sworn interviews, which could take months. Only then will they decide whether to hold public hearings. Democrats admit they're worried about looking foolish if their probe comes up dry. Dan?
Thanks, Rita Braver. And joining us now live from East Chicago, Indiana, where he's been doing some campaigning with steelworkers, is House Speaker Thomas Foley. Good evening, Mr. Speaker. Thanks for being with us. What about Bob Michaels saying that this is strictly political, nobody at home really gives a hoot about it, and it's a waste of time and money?
Well, I'm sorry Bob Michael has said that. In the first place, it's certainly not political. If it were political, Senator Mitchell and I wouldn't start off by accepting at his word as we do President Bush's statement that he had no knowledge of it or didn't participate in it in any way. So we're not interested in that. Lee Hamilton is going to chair this inquiry in the House, and Senator Terry Sanford of North Carolina in the Senate. Both of these men are well known for their fairness and objectivity. The judicial character of their inquiry is going to be foremost. It's not going to have any political edge or purpose.
Witnesses will, of course, be...
On the other hand, if we don't put these consistent and persistent rumors to rest, they're just going to continue. Both President Reagan and President Bush, President Carter as well, have said that if it's possible to lay them to rest and to conclude them, we ought to do it. And as I have understood their previous statements, they have said that they would welcome a fair and impartial inquiry.
Understand,
and this will be a fair and impartial inquiry.
Interrupting, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But does this mean that you will take President Bush's word for what he did and did not do, or is it possible that he'll be called and asked to testify under oath?
No, as far as I'm concerned, the President would not be called, and the President's statement that he does not have any knowledge about this and didn't participate in these alleged meetings will be accepted at face value. I do, and Senator Mitchell does as well.
Speaker of the House Tom Foley, thanks for being with us, live from East Chicago. There may be new indictments soon in the weapons for Iran criminal case. Sources in Washington tell CBS News tonight that the Special Prosecutor's Office has informed Dwayne Claridge, a former high-ranking CIA official, that he is among the targets now. The indictments could come next month, just before Congress opens confirmation hearings on the nomination of Robert Gates to be the new head of the CIA. Iraq publicly admitted today for the first time that it conducted biological warfare research for years, but Saddam Hussein's government told a United Nations inspection team that the research never reached the weapons stage. The UN team has been trying to verify that claim, as we hear from CBS News correspondent Alan Pizzi in Baghdad.
Iraq told the UN inspectors that work in its germ warfare laboratory was abandoned last fall because of fears of an Allied attack. The inspection team was reluctant to say what was found at the site they checked out today.
At the moment, I'm not prepared to comment on that. We have made progress today. I think the United Nations should be the first to know about that progress.
Kelly said the Iraqis were cooperating, that they had disclosed the existence of the research facility when the UN team arrived in the country, and the team was checking for more sites.
What sort of weapons are you looking for, or what sort of research?
Biological weapons and research which leads to the production of biological weapons and the ingredients of them.
The continuing evidence that Iraqi disclosures in April were incomplete, and that they can only be brought to a greater degree of completion by the assiduous carrying out of inspections.
A newspaper statement by a foreign ministry official said Iraq has no biological weapons, and research into them was just part of a larger scientific project. UN Security Council Resolution 687 orders Iraq to fully disclose its ability to produce chemical, nuclear, and biological weapons, to destroy any such weapons that exist, and to destroy any ballistic missiles it has. Some weapons have already been crushed under UN supervision. But there is a large credibility gap because when the nuclear inspection team first started work, not everything was out in the open. The site near Mosul in the north has just come to light, and there may be many more scattered around the country. Iraqi officials have repeatedly declared that they are ready to cooperate fully and make complete disclosures of work in progress on weapons of mass destruction. But only, it seems, when the pressure is firm and unrelenting. Alan Pizzi, CBS News, Baghdad.
And still ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, Eye on America, families of Gulf War veterans, some of them still feeling the pain. And you and your kids getting bilked on milk. New opposition this evening to President Bush's Supreme Court nominee. The nation's oldest and largest group of minority lawyers, the National Bar Association, has voted to oppose Clarence Thomas. Thomas himself is a member of this lawyers group. He was not present for the vote. Wichita, Kansas is the latest focus of the nation's building debate over abortion. The bitterness now includes another wave of arrests in Kansas and a federal judge's threat to take action against anti-abortion groups. Scott Pelley is covering in Wichita.
After 4 weeks of chaos outside Wichita abortion clinics, a federal judge today vowed to restore order and launched a blistering attack against Operation Rescue, the radical anti-abortion group. Judge Patrick Kelly, visibly angry on the bench, called the leaders of Operation Rescue hypocrites and promised to see them all in jail if the clinic blockades continued. The judge told Operation Rescue leader Randall Terry that the U.S. Justice Department has agreed to provide all the federal marshals necessary to enforce his order.
They should say farewell to their family and bring their toothbrush, and I mean it, because they're going to jail.
The judge said his anger erupted after seeing the blockades continue today in violation of his previous order. This is the 4th week of the siege of the clinics, with about 2,000 protesters hauled away so far. Operation Rescue is attempting to close the city's 3 abortion clinics using intimidation at the door.
There is such enormous brutality psychologically and emotionally that these people inflict on patients.
Operation Rescue has targeted Wichita with virtually all of its resources, hoping to establish an anti-abortion beachhead in the heartland.
Don't let them hurt your baby!
The month of protests is wrenching the city. More than a quarter of the police force is assigned to clinic duty at a cost so far of almost $500,000. Today, an organization calling itself pro-law demanded city government do something.
Why are we spending $500,000 on this issue? I think the taxpayers and the voters in this community are entitled to an answer.
That answer may come tomorrow. Judge Kelly says that if necessary, he will deputize the Wichita Police Department, placing the city's police officers under federal control. The judge urged Operation Rescue to think twice before returning to the clinics. Scott Pelley, CBS News, Wichita, Kansas.
Milk money, like bank money, has long been a major factor in contributions to political campaigns in this country. That's one of the factors in some of the nation's best-known dairies being investigated again for allegedly rigging bids on milk supplies for schools and skimming off extra millions in profits. Bob Fall has been looking into this.
One state attorney general calls it the most unconscionable type of fraud. Thousands of unsuspecting youngsters paying up to a nickel more than they should have in some cases for milk they bought in school. The Department of Justice now thinks several of the nation's largest dairies have been rigging prices and overcharging children for decades.
I think by the time we get through, we will find that the overcharges have been hundreds of millions of dollars.
The department admits it's investigating dairy pricing in at least 9 states, mostly in the southeast and on the Atlantic coast, as well as in Texas, where 7 of the state's largest dairies, charged by the Texas Attorney General with price rigging, have agreed to pay back school districts nearly $15 million.
I'm at a loss to explain a motivation or intention involved here other than plain simple greed, and really the worst type because it was directed toward our school children and it had been going on for so long.
The scheme itself was simple. 3 supposed competitors would get together beforehand to carve up the territory. Then 2 companies would submit artificially inflated bids, guaranteeing that the 3rd company, which bid slightly less, would win the contract.
Prosecutors also say that to rip off lunch programs, the dairy companies would even resort to coded messages. An official at one dairy telephoning the official at another, saying he was going to pay $1,400 for a brown Chevrolet. What that meant, say prosecutors, is that he was willing to pay 14 cents for half pints of chocolate milk.
And a few pennies here, a few there, say prosecutors, adds up to real victims.
The result of this conduct is that there's less milk for school kids, particularly for the needy school kids that really need it.
Today, trade associations representing the dairies involved refuse to discuss any of the charges. Bob Fall, CBS News, New York.
Stay with CBS now for more news, including charges that a ship's crew violated the law of the sea.